In this lecture, we are going to look at static methods and properties in PHP. When we declare a property or method as static, what we actually want to do is we want to be able to access that method or property without the need for creating an instance of the class. What we have done previously was to actually create a class, and then from the class we create an instance, and using that instance we make use of the properties and method of the class. But when we declare the properties of our class or the methods of our class as static, we don't need to create a new instance of the class. We can directly access those properties and methods without the need for creating a new instance. Let's illustrate this quickly in PHP. So I'm going to create a new class here. So I'm going to call this database. And inside of this class, I'm going to have some static properties. So the first one will be static, private, PDO. And then the next one will be static, public, operators. And this will be equal to an array of different operators. So let's say we have the equal operators. And then we have the not equal, and then we have and then we have or, and then we have like. So right here, I'm using the static keyword before the private keyword. You can actually switch that. You can use private before static, or you can use static before private. It doesn't really matter. So we can actually write it like this and still achieve the same result. And then right now we are going to create two static methods. We have two static properties. We also want to create two static methods. So say public, static, function, connect. The connect method here is going to take one parameter, which will be a string, and it's going to be the method of connection. And then inside of here, we can then say save PDO is equal to the parameter method. So you can take note of something different here already. Instead of this, as we used previously, we are now using save, which means we are referring to the class itself. We cannot use this on a static property. Once the property or method is static, we can no longer use the pseudo variable this. We need to use save, or we need to use static. And then next we want to create the second one, which is public static function create. This is going to take an array of data and then do a var_dump. So we can say var_dump creating a new database with, and then here we can say save PDO. And then on line 19, we can then actually begin to use the methods and the properties that we've defined inside of this database class. So here we can say database operator. So let's do a var_dump on that. And then here we can now say database connect, and then we pass it a string. Let's say PDO. And then here we can say database create, and then pass it an empty array because we are really not doing anything with this. So let's do a reload on the browser. And right here, you can see the array that contains the various operators, and then you can see creating a new database with PDO. So if you look at the code again, this is different from what we did previously. When we used a class previously, we always used the new keyword to instantiate that class. But right now, because we are dealing with the static methods and property inside of this database class, we no longer need to create an instance of this class. But if we also have some non-static methods or properties, then we need to actually instantiate the class in order to be able to use those methods or properties. So let's see one or two examples. Right here, I'm going to create a new method, public function get method. So this is actually going to get us the connection method. And then here we can say return save PDO. So if we say this, you can see that the only thing that we can access using this is actually this public method that is not static, get method. This is the only thing that we can access using this inside of this class right now. But if we have other methods or properties that are not static, then we can actually refer to them using this. Otherwise, we need to use self, or we need to use the keyword static, which we are going to talk about when we talk about late static binding. And then if we scroll down, we can then say DB is equal to new database. And right now we can say DB get method. We can actually echo this out. And then let's do a reload on the browser. We still get everything, and now we get PDO, which is the connection method for this basic database class. The last thing that I want to bring to your attention before we wrap up this lecture is, let's get back again to our text editor. When we are inside of a static method, we cannot use the keyword this. So even if I have a property here that is non-static, so let's create a public or private table. This is a non-static property. Right here inside of a static property, I cannot refer to this property. So let's come here and say this table. You can see already that my text editor is underlining this, is saying this is not accessible in static context. Because this is not a static property, I cannot refer to it inside of a static method. There's a way that we can work around this. So I'll just quickly introduce you to the concept, and later we are also going to see different application of late static binding. So what I can do here is get rid of this. And then here I can say object is equal to new static. And then here I can say object table. So right now I'm able to access a non-static property inside of a static method, because what I'm doing here is that I am indirectly creating an instance of the database class and then accessing this property table, which is non-static. So the way that we do that is object equals new static. Object could be anything. I just name is object here. This is a concept that is known as late static binding. There are other applications of this which we are going to see in the course later. But for now, this is just a simple way that we can actually implement late static binding. All right, I'll see you in the next lecture.